It is Monday, July 29th, 2024, 7:30 p.m. I call this meeting of the Needham Design Review Board to order. I am the board chair, Mark Glusing, and I would like to confirm that all members and applicants are present and can be heard. So members, when I call your name, please respond. Steve Dornbush. Can you hear us, Steve? Okay.
Sorry, here.
Susan Opton,
Here.
Lee Pradhan,
Here.
and okay, Felix is not here yet. Also attending us, our town staff person, Elisa Lichman. Applicants, if one of you from the team would respond when I call the project. Unique Laser. Lynette, you're with us? I think I see him. Okay, I'll take that. There you go. Perfect. Air Wellness, 29 Franklin Street. Is there somebody here? Okay. Maybe not. 943 Great Plain Ave, the Run House.
Yep, here.
Brian.
How you doing?
Linden Chambers redevelopment. I see several people.
Yeah, we're all here. Thank you,
Okay,
Mark.
thanks. Welcome to this open meeting of the Needham Design Review Board, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with state orders. The orders allow public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Needham Design Review Board is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website and the Design Review Board page, identifying how the public may join. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. The DRB does not typically take public comment on review projects. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this board are available on the town's website. Public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. This meeting is being broadcast to the town's YouTube channel and also via Zoom, and is being recorded for publication and later viewing and for administrative purposes. Be aware that other people are able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer unless the chair approves. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. I'd like to review the remote meeting procedures for tonight's meeting. I will introduce each applicant on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I'll take comments or questions from Design Review Board members. After discussion, each vote will be by a roll call vote. The building department requires electronic submission of building permit applications. A copy of your application stamped and noted for the type of approval that you receive will be emailed to you by the DRB support staff. That can then be attached to your building permit application. We will now start with the first item on the agenda. This is a continued review of 922 Highland Avenue, Unique Laser. We did have a discussion at our last meeting and they were continued to tonight. So we'll start with them. Mehmet, do you want me to put your project up on the screen?
I can share the screen. I don't know. I don't remember. Did I send to you guys update information? Let me share my screen.
Okay, let's. Yes, that's what we received, I believe. Is that not in the package, Elisa? Yeah.
Did you guys receive this design?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Sign dimension 24-inch by 144-inch. The letter size is 12-inch by 91 inches.
Okay.
And then the black background and then white leather. Channel leather, light tone. LED, we are going to use LED light inside.
So they're illuminated letters?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But Are they face lit or? I
Face
thought-
it this time.
Oh, this time they're face lit, okay. Okay, and the sign, is there a frame around that sign panel?
Yes, we're gonna make it a 1.5 inch pen sign and then install letters on front of the face and then the wire together and then close it behind and then go to one or two lines wires and then connect with the power.
Right, I think that answers my question. So I will start with members. Steve, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I do have to ask, if this is going to be an ongoing problem, I have to admit, maybe it's my age, I'm having trouble understanding some of what you're saying. And I would like to request, if this is going to be ongoing, that maybe we could look into it, because you have a lot of valuable things to say, and I want to be able to respond appropriately. But I don't know if I'm the only one, but like I say, I'm missing some of what you're saying. However, first question is, you're removing the lights above it?
Yes,
Okay. And only because it looks, I know this is just like photoshopped in and everything. The glass is staying the same also?
yes,
That's not changing?
no.
Okay. But no, you ask about the lights. No, other than that, and that it's balanced with the sign next to it, the wine and spirit, beer and spirit sign. I have no other questions right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mehmet, I'm gonna stop for a second while why don't I go through, but I will note to the members that there's wording shown on the windows now that was not in the submission we received. So we can just keep that in mind as we discuss this. Okay, so Susan?
I don't have any additional questions or comments.
Okay. Millie?
So I was not here the last time this was discussed, but one immediate kind of feedback I have looking at this is that, I think between the two words, I think unique and laser is supposed to be two different words, right? My recommendation would be is to kind of give a little bit spacing between the two, just a little bit more so that it kind of reads as, unique laser and not read as unique laser, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think like that
How
looks
now?
spaced out a little bit. That looks good.
I
Well,
changed a little bit.
Mehmet's the wizard of instant change, so. that's good.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's better, right?
Yeah, definitely better.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Nope, that's all from my end.
And Elisa, I don't have Felix on my list here. Do you? Okay. Yeah, I think that if we incorporate Millie's suggestion, Mehmet, I think it looks good. We appreciate that you responded to our feedback from the last meeting. I think it looks good sitting there. However, I don't, if we move on to the window graphics, that's something that we also review. And that is just a bit much. Basically, the sign bylaw in Needham is really designed to identify a business in its location. And we recognize that sometimes it's good to list sort of what the products or services actually are on some businesses, because there was a store called Pollywogs and nobody knew really what it was. So they had children's clothing on the awning valance, and that made perfect sense. If you want to have some items here, sorry, if you wanted to have some wording there that talked about generally what Unique Laser does, it's whether it's hair removal, and other things, you need to sort of create a generic description that talks about, and I don't know what it is, I'm not in the industry, but you might talk to your client and say, it's just, you know, I would not approve those as current. It's just a bunch of words on there that you're just, they're sort of obvious to what that business typically is, but if you want to make, you know, laser hair removal, body conditioning, sculpturing or something, and do that in across the 3 panels, that might be more acceptable. But to list every possible little treatment that you have in there is not really what those sorts of window signage are intended for. So we don't have that in our package. This is the first time we've seen that. So I would suggest that we continue with your review on the main sign, and then you can come back, you know, you're free to come back to us with some ideas on the windows. So that's my suggestion at this time. And the submission that we have on public record does not have those. So we're really only going to review, we really can only review the main sign tonight anyway, but the idea that you want to do those is fine. But again, I'm giving you some feedback like last time that needs to be much, much, much simpler. And think about sort of the 3 main things you do, and do a 6-inch band of letters across the windows. That's really more typically what we see in that kind of window graphic.
Like you're saying, use 25% of the windows, right?
You want to say that again, please?
We can use 25% of the window size.
Yes, you can, but not this way. Just what you're trying to do doesn't need 25%. We simply don't typically approve a laundry list of everything the business does. That's really for your website or for other promotional material or other ways. The reason it's 25%, some people use a graphic element in it, and then that takes up some space. Or they don't have an upper sign, and the main sign is really in the windows themselves. There are some businesses like that. So, but just a laundry list of what the business does is not something that we typically would approve. At least I won't. I don't know what the other members would say, but we historically, that is not what the window idea of allowing the window graphics is meant to do.
All right, yeah.
So any other comments from the board?
I agree with what you just said.
Yes, I agree.
All right, so I would take a motion to approve the submitted package, the sign that we have, with the condition that the spacing between the Q and the L be increased slightly. And we'll allow Mehmet to do sort of what he's done here for us, but I won't specify a distance.
I will move the motion.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, we come to the vote. Steve,
As you just described, yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Millie,
Yes.
and the chair approves. So, okay. All right, thanks, Mehmet.
Thank you.
Like I say, if you want to do
Bye.
graphics, put together another presentation and come back.
All right,
And
thank you.
the timing on that shouldn't impact getting this sign up.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. And the next item on the agenda is 29 Franklin Street, Air Wellness. Is Anna here? How do I get down? Oh, can you unshare your screen, Mehmet? Mehmet, can we have the screen back, please? Mehmet, can you hear me? Okay, this is a little harder. Mehmet, Mehmet, you need to stop screen there. Perfect, thank
There
you.
we
Now we're in business. Okay, next item is, I thought I saw Anna show up. Yeah, she is here. Okay. Next item is 29 Franklin Street. Anna Hollick, do you want to go ahead and show us what you're doing? Or if you want, I can put it up on the screen.
Yeah, I can actually, sorry, my dog's trying to come in. One moment. Yeah, go be daddy. Sorry about that. I'm actually going to share my screen because I believe they do have some door lettering of their business hours, and I'm not sure if
Okay.
that you have that. So let's see. Share screen. I believe it's this one. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
All right, and you can still hear me, perfect. Okay, do I need to do any introduction before I start?
Sorry.
Mark, you're muted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think I can hear you.
Unmute. Okay, it didn't unmute. Sorry. Just give us a quick overview of the location. You have that map, and then you can go ahead and move into the elevations and the sign dimensions.
Okay, perfect. So here we just have Air Dispensary moving in at 29 Franklin Street. On page 2, this just kind of goes to show, let me zoom in a bit. This just goes to show we're just putting that sign above the main front entrance. Here you'll see the channel letter set, and it's pretty proportional to the sign band that is going above. So that's where, this is the superimposed, and again, it's the front lit channel letter set on a raceway. The raceway will be painted to match the facade. And this is just a nighttime simulation. So you'll see that it has blue lettering and then it has a bit of a white outline around it, just so that it pops a little bit more, because it is a bit hard to see a blue channel letter. And I'm just going to scroll up here real quick so you can kind of see they have a couple of windows. This one is an entrance that won't be able to be used. They have windows, and then this is the main entrance. And then just so that you guys can see that better, this is the vinyl that you'll be using. It's perforated vinyl, which just means that those that are standing outside of the entrance can't see in, but if you're walking out, you can actually see outside, just so that no one's running into each other. But the other vinyl that's there, it's just blue. There's no lettering on it, but they just wanted to cover up anything that can be seen in. So this right here, the door graphics, is just, again, the company name and then the store hours. So what we're asking for the board today is to approve the channel letter set above the main entrance, and then the door lettering, which is mainly just the blue, that's theirs, and then the store hours.
Okay, thank you. Can you leave that one up? That'll be fine. So we'll start with Steve again.
Is there illumination on? I didn't catch that, if there was, on the sign, on the name.
Yes, that would be front lit illumination.
So there's going to be lights. When you say front lit, or
It's
Yes.
it's
Yeah, the letters.
internal?
internally illuminated letters.
Yeah. Okay. No, I really, at this point, I don't have any questions really.
Okay. Susan?
No questions. I think it looks nice.
Okay. Millie?
No questions, but just one kind of comment is that, like, do you all think the proportion of the hours and the name on the door, like, is that like typical? The hours just like looks very small to me.
Could you scroll down to that? Amy?
Yeah, on the right here, this one.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're often varied size. At 7 inches,
Yeah.
I don't consider that a big difference. But yeah, they often are done where the actual hours are an inch or less high.
Mm.
You end up having to walk, the idea isn't to show people driving by what the hours are. It's really
Yeah.
for making them.
Yeah, people who
Bring it
okay,
in.
walk up. Okay, got it. Yeah, I don't have any other comments otherwise.
I think the upper sign is fine, and as you heard, and you may have heard in our last discussion, there are limitations typically of 25% of the area of a glass panel to be filled with whatever. And I think your signage portion of that is fine, but that would normally go on a clear door.
Yep.
So to actually turn it into a sort of opaque door is unusual in these things. It sort of dances on the edge of being a facade change rather than simply signage. But I don't have any real objection to it. I understand what you're trying to do. And I'd be curious if the rest of the board has any concerns with making that sort of an opaque panel. Although they can see going out. If everybody's comfortable with that, then I will move on.
I'm fine with it.
I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, it wasn't clear. I think on the submission, it wasn't clear the color of the raceway, but you're telling us it's going to be painted to match the building.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. It says painted to match sign band, so I guess that will fill the deed for what we need. So I would take a motion to approve the signage for 29 Franklin Street Air Wellness as submitted.
I would like to move the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Right, and we come to the vote. Steve?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes,
Millie?
Yes.
And the chair approves. All right. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is 943 Great Plain Avenue, applying for signage. I believe this is the old Three Crown Jewelry space.
Yep.
Okay, so go ahead, Brian.
Yep, just proposing a 1/2 inch thick PVC sign panel. They'll hang from the old jewelry store sign scroll bracket there. Be double-sided, obviously, with vinyl graphics applied to each side. And yeah, I actually think it's a little bit smaller than the old Crown Jewelry sign.
Yeah, it's 6 square feet. You're allowed, I think, 7, so you're in good condition on this side. Any questions or comments, Steve?
You answered my question. It was about the size. It looks good to me.
Okay. Millie?
Looks good.
Okay. Susan?
no comments.
Okay. I guess the one thing is all the signs that we've had there have a little anchor chain from that lower, in this case, your photograph, the lower right-hand corner to the wall, just to tie it from flapping around. Is that going to be done here?
He was gonna if he needed to. I mean, we're gonna put the sign up. He didn't really want it if it wasn't needed, but
Right. Yeah, I think there was a different applicant with a sign either adjacent to that one or similar. He thought it was important to do that. So we would probably, I would want to make that a condition, that you go ahead and add an anchor.
Right.
Stabilizing chain.
All right.
So,
We can-
any other comments from the board? Okay, so I would take a motion to approve the sign for 943 Great Plain Avenue, the Run House, with the condition that they add a small anchor chain to the sign and connect it to the building.
I would like to move the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, and we vote, Steve,
Yes,
Susan,
Yes,
Lily,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. All right. Thanks, Brian. It's good to see
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
you. And the next item on the agenda is the Linden Shabers redevelopment project. This is the Needham Housing Authority for the town of Needham, proposing a new project. For anybody who doesn't know, that's down on across from the playfields on Linden Street at not High Rock.
High Rock School.
It's High Rock School. Okay. I was blanking. So I will turn it over to you, Reg, and your team.
Great. Hey, I'm Reg Foster. I'm chair of the Needham Housing Authority. And as many people probably know, but I'll just repeat it here in case there isn't somebody who doesn't know, who knows. The Needham Housing Authority is on a program to try to modernize or redevelop all of our aging housing units in Needham. There are 316 of them altogether. What we're looking at today is the first of two projects, which is focused on our Linden Street development. Dan will get into more details. And we are proposing to take down 72 very ancient, very worn out studio apartments and replace them with 136 new units. I'd like to introduce Dan Chen. He's the leader of the Bargmann, Hendry and Architect, or BH&A, since that's too many syllables for most of us, most of the time here, architecting team that's been working on it since the beginning of January 2023. We've gone through a complete process that has led us here. And Dan's going to get into a lot more background detail before we dive into the sort of design review board part of our mission here tonight here. So Dan, why don't you take it away and introduce the other people who are here tonight?
Great. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, board members. My name is Dan Chen. I'm principal in charge from the Architect BH+A. With me tonight, I have Brad McCord from my office, who's the project manager, and Curtis Puncher, who's the landscape architect from Ground Inc. So our presentation tonight will be about 20 minutes or so. We'll try to limit to that so we can open up the presentation for discussion. I'm happy to pull up any of the slides back while we're talking about things. So without further ado, I will jump into the presentation. Please let me know if you can't see them, as you know, my screen is bigger, so I hope you can also see it. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Needham Housing Authority, the redevelopment of Linden Street, today, Design Review Board, August 19, 2024. Just tonight's agenda, I'll be doing the introduction and a quick project background. I'll hand it off to our landscape architect. We'll talk about site layout and the flow of circulations, and then the landscape design, particularly the planting, the tree species, and so on. And then I will be then talking about the building exterior design, focusing on the materials and the neighborhood context. And then we'll open up to question comments at the end of the presentation. Introduction. As Rich mentioned, for timeline, this project really started in 2019 before our involvement. Our firm was invited through an RFP and involved with this project the redevelopment Linden Chambers, we've completed, and since we started in January 2023, so it's about 18 months now. And we started and completed a concept phase in June of last year, schematic design in November of last year. All of this really leads to the goal of establishing the affordable housing district, which was passed in this past spring town meeting in May of 2024. With that, so the building now then are moving in earnest as we're moving into design development. We have started the design review team, and tonight was the design review board. All of this then leads to a site plan review submission as scheduled for later this month, August 23, I believe is now 26. And with the goal of having the public planning board hearing in September, third week of September 24th. So that's kind of our general timeline in terms of the project currently development. And as well, that a project of this size can be sort of in a vacuum, and we've engaged all these, and I won't go into all of them, but you can see, so because of the 18 months histories of this project, we've engaged obviously with the residents at Linden Chambers. We've engaged the public, and both large venues, such as in the community center, we have many of those, and informing the residents at Linden Chambers with the development, as well as large sort of presentations. This was one of the public hearings scheduled, and we had a fairly robust attendance, both of the immediate butters, the neighbors, as well as the larger public in Needham. And this is a project that we were that we wanted to solicit input, as well as obtain the public comments from the project for all the stakeholders. And this was started in January of last year. I think the latest one was probably around middle of this year in May. The existing conditions, the buildings, there's two sites, and both they're contiguous to each other. Linden site, which has 18 buildings, were built in 1959-62, so that's around 60 years old. And the Chambers site, which has 5 buildings, 2 stories, and that was about 50 years old. So as you can see, both sites have buildings that have been sort of averaging 50, 60 years with very minimum maintenance. And as you can understand then, that these 152 studio units are in fairly poor condition, both of the site and the buildings. And given that the demographic here is an elderly population, the accessibility becomes particularly important. The sized units themselves are 400 square feet. Studios are significantly undersized for today's standards based on the state housing EOHLC housing livable communities, and as well as the parking here it's about sort of the lighting access, the access to the parking from the units, and then the site also presents some challenges, particularly with adjacency to wetland, and so we are going through the Needham Conservation Commission with a notice of intent, and that's also in process, as well as some of the environmental challenges on this site. Our goal here is to improve both sort of the housing, the living standards of the residents, as well as the site around here. Existing Linden Chambers Street, here you see what's in orange is the Linden property, where we have 18 buildings on site, and they are a total of 72 studio units. What you see here in yellow are the chamber buildings. There are 80 units in 5 buildings. These are 2-story brick structures. There's a community building that's currently here, as well as a small office structure that's currently used for storage. So that's the total site area is around 11 acres, and that's what you see here in red, the property line. To orient you, right directly across the street is the High Rock Middle School. This is Linden Street. To your right, you will hit the major street there is Great Plain Avenue. And then further out here, the other major artery is High Rock Street. And so behind us is Maple Street neighborhood, primarily a two and a half story multifamily neighborhood. And then there is a large playing field directly across the street. As mentioned, and we passed the zoning, the establishing of the affordable housing district. Some of the key metrics here are height is set at 58 feet, limit for this affordable housing district. Number of stories at 4 with an FAR at 0.5. Units per acre established at a maximum of 25 units, dwelling units per acre. And for parking spaces at 0.5 parking per unit. And these are the metrics that are the key metrics that are part of the affordable housing district. And then to the right, you'll see the housing. These are the metrics that are part of our project. So we do have we are proposing 4 stories with an FAR 0.36. We have a 53 feet height to the top of the ridge of the roof. And as I go into the design, you will see those. And then establishing a 0.5 parking to dwelling unit ratio. And so these are some of the key metrics that we are using that are established under the affordable housing district. In in the building themselves here, primarily because of the number of units that are being displaced. For example, to build phase 1A, we'll have to relocate 40 units of residents, and that is a very heavy lift for Needham Housing Authority. So that is why the project, this entire project is divided into 2 phases of phase 1A and phase 1B, which will be built in in sequence. So we will build phase 1A first and then build phase 1B. And then these group of Linden residents and will move into the new phase 1A and allowing us then to build phase 1B. The other reason for this approach is that the funding of the project is also we are looking for funding, both state funding as well as a private developer funding. And so this type of financial arrangement sort of is beneficial in terms or viable in terms of using a 2-phase approach. Phase 1A will have 76 units. These are primarily 1-bedrooms, averaging 600 square feet, and that's based on housing standards. In phase 1B, we'll have 60 units at 4 stories, and that will be built after phase 1A, and then you will have a total of 136 new units on the Linden Street site. Here we're proposing 70 parking spaces. Here you can see 41 parking spaces in phase 1A, 29 parking spaces in phase 1B. We will also have 2 fire lanes, and this is in our discussion with the fire department, where these are how they will be using to service the building. And then in terms of the amenities, we have, and our landscape architect after this, he will talk about more in depth in terms of what these paths, the circulation about the site, the planting, and then the screening strategies along Linden Street. But here I'll just give you a brief overview that, again, Linden Street to the, in this case, to the east, or sorry, to the west, north is to my right. We're establishing 3 sort of recreation zones, one of which is here in the northern part of the site. One is behind the site, taking advantage of this natural resource, as well as the heavy, dense foliage, or not foliage, but the vegetation is back here. And this is also the wetland area back here as well. Then the third area is here, where we're establishing community garden for the residents. And community gardening is a very popular project or activity for the residents here. And so we've enlarged it, creating a community garden here and green space. So with that, I will hand this over to the landscape architect, who then will talk in some depth about these areas. Curtis.
Thanks, Dan. Dan, are you controlling this?
Yes, I'm driving.
Okay. Are you able to zoom in a little bit?
Yes, I can.
We'll sort of do a walk through the site here, starting at the north garden there.
Okay.
If you could, yeah,
Is this
great.
better?
So yeah, and maybe just pan over so we're not clipping the edge. Yeah, great. Yeah, so we'll sort of walk through, starting from this diagonal sidewalk coming from the north, Needham Center. This is the sort of passive rec amenity space for the residents. It's a hardscape patio with a trellis and seating in a sort of garden-esque setting. So I'll get into the plant palettes later on. But the idea here is there's sort of nice ornamental garden. There's hardscape seating, great place to read a book, have a cup of tea. There's also some benches placed in the lawn there if you want to have a more private conversation off to the side. Continuing south, there's another small structure there before we hit that fire lane. That's a designated smoking area. We have one at the north and south ends of the building. And then you'll see a couple more boxes to the east of what I was just talking about. Yeah, that's just some back of house trash enclosure, that white box with the big swing doors and a generator. And we have a wood screen for the trash, and then we want to have some fairly robust planting around to screen those structures. I guess we'll carry along. I'll also point out there's a small gray box right at the north end of the building there. That is covered bike parking. So again, we have a covered bike parking at the north exit and also at the south exit. We'll see that as we pan over. I guess we'll stick with the east side of the building here, in between the building and the sort of riparian area or wetland in those trees there. It's just a simple pathway here, heading to a generous back patio area. This is the interior sort of community room and interior amenity space for residents, and it'll spill out onto this patio. It's about 1,700 square feet. Right now we're showing seating for 68 residents, just to give you an idea of the size of it. We are looking at having a built-in grill. Well, we're not sure if it's going to be built in or a grill that can be brought in when it's not grilling season. But the idea is that it's sort of a resident parties, socials, maybe cookouts. So then again, that walking path, and this walking path is interrupted at times by the fire lanes, but it does provide an accessible walking path, not just in phase 1, but we've sort of got some early concept sketches for phase 2, and it carries on through phase 2 and to some walking trails in the forest south of the site. So, it's part of, active recreation, and we know walking is a pastime for residents. So we want to provide, sort of nice trails for them. I guess we'll go to the south and then flip back to the west side of the building. At the south end, again, you see that, a covered bike parking and a designated smoking area. And then, as Dan mentioned, this is the sort of more active amenity space for the residents, a community garden. There is very active gardening happening on site now, and with the anticipated increase in population, we are providing more beds than they currently have. The big square ones we're looking at being sort of at grade or maybe up by 12 inches. And then the smaller ones are raised accessible beds. So 3 feet off the ground. So, folks with limited mobility can also access the gardens. There's a tool shed, some compost bins, and then a shaded seating area to the east where those chairs are. Yeah, there's a sort of open area, and then there's a small trellis there as well to provide some shade. And just to finish it off, talking about the streetscape here, we are looking at having a sort of robust planting edge in between the parking lot and the sidewalk on Linden Street. Lots of street trees. There are a couple seating areas that flank that roundabout for residents. We understand now there are residents who like to, watch the action out on Linden Street and the folks across the street playing ball. And then as you come in through the roundabout, there is a drop off at the front door, sort of a generous landing pad there for folks, if they got groceries or they're waiting for a ride. There's also benches there for people who are waiting. I should mention that all this paving I'm calling out, it's all permeable paving. So the stuff at the back where the trellises are, it's all going to be permeable paving. And then on either side of that main entry, there are sidewalks that again extend, to the north and south, provide access from the parking lot. And that dark gray line is a stone wall. So the vehicles coming in with their lights on at night, we don't want that, that light intruding into the residents' units. So that's a 3 to 4 foot wall that's going to block that lighting and provide sort of a nice layering of the hardscape at the front of the building. And then I think we'll move on from that slide. Again, this is the same information, just in a more sort of technical CAD format. And I'll just mention planting. I don't want to spend too long on it. We can also always come back if there's questions about it in brief. There's 3 main palettes. So I mentioned that sort of garden-esque, more sort of English garden palette at the north garden. There's the Linden Street and building frontage palette, which is going to be sort of woodier shrubs, grasses, stuff with great year-long blooming, good street presence. And then in the back, it's going to be all native because we are close to a natural area. And it is shadier, so it's more native shady species, sorry. Just a few images. We do have a plant palette. And these are just, we just grabbed some images from, some of the plants that are on that palette. Go ahead. Yeah, this is the same palette, just sort of broken up into 2 slides. So again, grasses, lots of blooming shrubs, get that sort of, foundation in the front of the building. Smaller flowering trees up against the building. Here's that sort of native palette for the rear of the site. Lots of ground covers. We are, close to a kind of a tall tree canopy. But we do also want to provide some screening to the neighbors across on Maple Street to the east. So we're looking at both small deciduous trees as well as smaller coniferous trees, just to really screen that edge there. And yeah, and again, finally, here's that north garden with more sort of flowering perennials and seasonal blooms and seasonal interest for that part of the site. And finally, some notes on the lighting strategy. So I believe there are 4 types of exterior lighting. This is the tallest. These will light the driving surfaces. They're the sort of light poles. Mainly in the parking lot and along just a few on the fire lane. We don't want to light it too brightly. We don't want to call too much attention to it, but also, in the case of emergency, we do want it to be obvious that those are there. Go ahead. These are smaller bollards. So this is that sort of walking path from the north across the rear of the site. All we want to do here is light that walking surface. We don't want light intrusion into the natural area or into the residence units. So that's why we're keeping it very low here. And then again, here's in that stone wall I mentioned, this is a step light that'll be recessed into that wall. And we just want to light that sidewalk again. So folks, if they arrive at night, it's a well-lit sidewalk for them to get to the front door. And yeah, so these will be both affixed to the building. These are little downlights at the entryways, and then in the structures, so the trellis, the designated smoking areas, in those shoulder seasons when folks still want to spend outside, go outside, but it's dark, we do want to illuminate some of these structures. Go ahead. Yeah,
Great.
back to you, Dan.
Thanks, Curtis. And I will also mention, since we just got off the lighting, that all the lights will be 100% cut off so that there will be no lighting pollution to the neighbors as well as to the sky. So these fixtures are also dark sky compliant. Those numbers that you're seeing are a photometric of the site that is produced. And as we continue through the site plan review process, those will be refined. In terms of the buildings, we have, again, this I'll go into very quickly. The building is laid out as a double-loaded corridors with units on either side. The main area here composed a lobby, a large community center that you saw, some common areas, offices. The main circulation is housed in phase 1A. There's 2 elevators that will take you to all 4 floors. And there's also ground floor building services, in this case, a trash chute, recycle area on each floor, and then main sort of circulation taking it out to that recycle and trash area to the north here. Primarily, these units are 1 bedrooms, averaging of 600 square feet. And then phase 1B, you have, again, the repeat of the same 1A double corridors. Primarily 1 bedroom units coming out of the hallway. Typical floor, here you see that we have the same repeat of the 1 bedrooms up on the second, third, and fourth floor, repeating to, and then finally on the roof plan, we have this area that you see here are flat roofs, and we are housing primarily mechanical systems are on the flat roofs. And here we also have pitch roofs, which you'll see shortly in the building sections and elevations. And on the pitch roof is where we are placing the photovoltaic panels. This building is fully electric, so there's no fossil fuel usage at this building. Per energy code, we also have photo PV cells on the roof to help generate energy, offset energy used for this building. Building's elevation or site section, as you see that the highest part of the roof is at 53 feet. Building floor is at 12 feet, and an average floor, or the typical floor, is at 10 feet floor with an 8-foot finished ceiling in the units, anticipated 8-foot ceiling. So it's a very comfortable height for these apartments. The mechanical system is housed on the flat portion of the roof. The pitch roof here will accommodate the solar panels on the roof here. Here's the section cut that you see, the parking in front, and then Linden Street off here. And this is the screening of the trees, both front and back. Building elevations here, and you have sort of a straight on elevation. First up here is Linden Street, and we'll have some enlarged elevations for you to kind of look at the materials. And we have, this is primarily a fiber or high density fiber shingle or fiber cement panel system. Here you have phase 1A, and then this is the dividing line, phase 1B. This is that middle portion was the lobby area. So we wanted to break this facade using various measures in pushing in and out to sort of to create this variation. And along Linden Street, that same strategy is used at the back of Maple Street. So again, this is that knuckle area that you see on the plan separating both sides of the building. Here we have a south elevation, and here's the north elevation of the building. And with that, I'm going to jump right into sort of a larger version of it. So hopefully you can see a little bit better. Some of the proposed materials, we're using a fiber cement cedar pattern, as well as a board and batten pattern on upper floors. And that the goal here is to break up this facade to create some visual interest. Primarily, the lower floors will have a shiplap siding along here, and then also some trim panels to create, again, breaking up the volume of this facade. The middle portion, where the lobby areas on the first floor and residentials above, will have a patterned fiber cement system that are, again, using both colors and texture to separate this portion and to create a level of hierarchy. And then lastly, some sort of wood panel system at the entry point of the on the first floor, where here's the main lobby. This is the main the seating area in the lobby. And so again, trying to use this to create a level of texture, a level of hierarchy as we go around the building. On the back side, this is now facing Maple Street. As you can see here, same strategy, using this a different hierarchy material in the middle. And then using different siding patterns, both shiplap as well as board and batten, to create sort of a separation between to separate the volume of the building. Here you have the elevator vertical core here, sort of push beyond, so that again, the goal here is to separate, to sort of bring each of the wings in and out, so that you generate some break down the massing of the building. The materials, and again, this is in your packet, primarily cement fiber board, board and batten panels, lap siding, a texture panel. The windows currently are being proposed as a fiberglass or a CPVC window system with a triple glazing. Again, these are mandated, required to pass the strict energy code that Needham is an opt-in community. Trim boards of varying width being used, as well as a masonry unit at the base of the building. So this generates sort of a base condition in which then the softer materials of the siding, the fiber cement boards, are then sort of on top of that, using some sort of these wood slats are to then create, again, generate some of the warmth and as one at the resident entry, so that really hope to break down the scale, but also create some interest as one comes into the building. Neighborhood context, we took some photos around the area, Deerfield Road. This is right in the back of Maple Street. This is just down Linden Street. These are some of the newer developments. And I think the goal here is to show that the context in this area is pitched roofs. They are also 2.5 stories, using trims contrasting color, windows, and the shiplap pattern, as well as the board and batten, to generate some sort of visual interest. And that's some of the same strategy that we're taking with this building. And finally, the last 5 renderings, I would just very quickly go through here to orient you again. This is Linden Street, High Rock Middle School, the field across. We're looking at an aerial from Maple Street. This is the Maple Street neighborhood. So you see phase 1A in this area, phase 1B here. And I will preface by saying that our renderings are still sort of catching up to our current design. So there's, I think, but hopefully it'll give you an idea of how the building massing is fitting into the neighborhood. Here are the 5 remaining chamber buildings that are not part of this project, where the dividing lines are here. Here you see the community garden. That's the area that Curtis talked about. This is the backside, and then you can see it's a heavily vegetated area along the wetland here, and then some of the screening strategies of this parking along Linden Street. Here's a view from the opposite side, Linden Street area view. Now here you see sort of the park in front, the phase 1A, phase 1B, the remaining chamber buildings on site for this phase. And then here we have, I believe this is Blake Street, Oak Street. This is Linden's, and then continuing off to the screen is Great Plains, and this is Sylvan Road right here. And here we have a corner view at Linden and Blake Street looking south. Here's phase 1A, and you see some of the viewing or the screening strategies of the parking area. This is that enclosure we talked about where the trash area will be sort of centrally collected and then taken away. And then just out of the view is the landscape, that northern garden that Curtis talked about. Here then is a view looking the opposite direction at Linden and Sylvan Road. Now we're looking north. Here we have phase 1B, again, 4 stories. Here you're just out of view is the community garden and then parking along Linden Street. And finally was the last view here, we're at the corner of High Rock Middle School Road and Linden. So here you see that we're just out beyond here is the entry of that knuckle, if you will. This is the lobby area, which is at a lower scale. And then that same strategy is used at both front and back. And then also separating the buildings by these sort of turning or slightly offsetting the buildings with these sort of inserts, if you will, that creates, again, breaking up the mass of the building along Linden Street. We're at 831, and I'll open up to any questions, comments, and thank you for your time.
Right, thank you, Dan and Curtis. I think what I'd like to do is look first at the site organization and landscaping, and then we'll look at the building. So could you put up the
Yes.
site plan again for us and just the sort of organization? That's a good enough to start, I think. You zoom in a little and get rid of the stuff on the left if you can. Thank you. So I'll open it up to the board. Millie, do you have any questions, comments about the site organization?
I have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
Maybe could you help me understand a little bit about where the wetland edge currently exists and what's the relationship of the wetland edge versus the new kind of building footprint?
So the wetland is right sort of where the colorings are off. In fact, where the colorings are off is what is the 25 no disturb zone. And so the 25 feet offset away from the actual wetland, which has been delineated in our concept study earlier last year. So we know exactly where the wetland lines are. And so when we discuss in our discussion with the Needham Conservation Commission, that they recognize that the existing development has already intruded into the 25 feet no disturb zone. So part of what we're trying to do is to completely keep out the building and improve the landscaping within, particularly in this case, removing invasive species within the wetland. The 25 feet. However, within the 50 feet zone, the Needham Conservation Commission was more forgiving in that they recognize, again, the existing building at Linden are impeding into that area. So here they are more sort of mindful but also our goal is to continue to improve that area with removal of invasive species and the planting of native species.
Got it. So in this diagram, does the light green in the front and the back represent lawn? I think that's what
that's correct. Is that correct, Curtis? These are the green areas is the lawn, the dark area is the planting.
Yeah, although in the back it's probably more like a ground cover. We wouldn't try to establish lawn in the back there. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, so I should change that.
Okay.
Then if you go to the next plan, you can actually see the line work of the wetland. And I think wetland is a very generous term for what this is. It's a hard stone and concrete channel that double. Yeah, so it's a stone and concrete channel that water runs down, and then it dives into the city's underground stormwater system. So it's sort of like an open part of the open air stormwater conveyance channel.
I see.
It's a concrete brook, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's in disrepair. And as you know, also as we're going through site plan review, we recognize that this area is prone to flooding. And in our many conversation with the neighbors and the butters, that sort of was one of their number one concern. We have photos of this area flooding, but obviously it's a much bigger problem that's sort of neighborhood wide. But in terms of what we're doing, we have an underground storm water management system that will capture all of sort of on-site runoff as well as the roof storm water and in these storm systems. And that's all sort of in our civil and site plan or civil system at the moment. But it is a bigger conversation also because that in itself is minuscule compared to the flooding problem that's in this neighborhood. Sorry.
So all the runoff then throughout the site is like goes to that underground storage system at the parking lot. Are there like in addition to that any other rain garden stormwater features being proposed?
I'll let Kurt speak to that, but I currently will have two storm systems. One is under this parking here, the other is under this drop-off area here. But in terms of outside of those two stormwater management systems, I don't, Curtis, do you want to touch on if there's any other sort of retention ponds or rain gardens?
There are two, like as Dan mentioned, subsurface infiltration systems, and then there is in the large lawn at the south end of the building, we are grading in a low point there, so it's more of a detention lawn. I don't want to say detention basin because it is going to be a grassed lawn and there will be a drain in it, but the drain will be set at a higher elevation than the base of the detention basin. So again, trying to get stormwater to I don't know if it's the roof leaders or surface runoff that will be directed there. But it is an opportunity for water to infiltrate before it heads into the municipal system.
Was there any discussion about that being kind of planted instead of just like being lawn, or were there any limitations?
I know in previous detention basins, and I'm not a civil engineer, and usually this is in the civil scope, but they do like them to be cut seasonally and maintained as a lawn. I think, if they're just left to be sort of planted and wild, they get a little weedy, and over time, I think their sort of capacity to it becomes more of an eyesore than a sort of amenity. And I think this one to date has just been perceived as sort of part of the lawn.
But like it's probably not going to be envisioned as a programmatic space, right?
No.
Few questions I have on circulation is that so there are two fire lanes on either sides of the building, and it feels very wide and very big. Is this like something that was going to be driven by the fire department?
Yeah,
and specifically,
unfortunately, it is. They need 25 feet or 20 feet wide drive aisles, and then also. These are the turning radiuses. Because of the wetland in the site, to minimize disruption to the back, we really couldn't have them drive along the back side of the building, which is what the fire department really wants to do. They need to, they want to get access to all around the building essentially. But because of the site and the constraints that we have, the sort of limitation here is that they can park their truck here. We are providing hydrants on either side and then allowing the 250 feet hose pull to service the building. The building is fully sprinklered, first of all. So that in combination with the safety feature and life safety features, they were amenable to us not having this road going around. However, because it is a fire lane, they do require these dimensions that are mandatory. What we are doing though is that we are in discussion about a permeable paving or asphalt for these fire lanes so that they are not complete sort of runoff. And so although they are counted as in our calculation, we are fully counting these as hard surfaces. In reality, these are what we have used in the past to some success of these pervious asphaltic road paving. So water will actually seep down during a rainfall and then slowly get into the storm water system.
Yeah, I mean, like the permeable asphalt like that will be definitely better. But at the same time, like, if you all are able to explore a little bit more in the materiality, for instance, like down here, like we see that like nice path kind of running along the wetland edge. But is there an opportunity here for, to make some of that kind of path continue, or like maybe have like a banding of, the paver along the fire lane? So it just like feels like, a little bit more pedestrian friendly. And, I understand that, for the fire safety, life safety, we have to do all that. But, how can we make that feel a little bit more pedestrian friendly?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think part of it is the fire lane separation, and also I'll mention that on this northern portion, where also this road here is double duty as the trash pickup that will come in, pick up the sort of central trash and recycling, and then go out this way. So it will utilize this side as that service. Whereas here, this primarily probably won't be used very much, I think, and so there is that sort of something we can do to try to I don't know, make it less intrusive. But I it is the width of it is unfortunately mandated by the fire department.
And do you know, like in the 25 feet, if it has to be like paving, or can it be 16 feet of asphalt and the rest being more like a granular material?
I think it's the wheel load, ability to take the wheel load of the fire truck. And so I think the mandate is that all 20 feet of this be sufficient to take the 16,000 pound wheel load that the fire truck is required. And so and also we're in mind that maintenance for the Needham Housing Authority is also an issue where even for the future developers, so that sort of maintenance free areas. And so, for example, Grass Creek, if it was a snow plow, it would pull up these sort of things, and they may not last as long. So those are some of the considerations that went into thinking about the fire lane construction.
Got it. And in terms of circulation, like final question for me is at the back, the community room and the patio, I think that's going to be a really nice space. Is that like intended to be kind of like, leased out for private events, or like what or just like like community groups?
Yeah, it's primarily for community resident use here. And as we were talking to the residents, we've been talking to them for about a year and a half. There's somewhat a strong community into groups. So there's the gardening group, and then also we do at BH+A, we do a lot of these senior elderly developments, and one of the primary sort of glue, if you will, are these community rooms that really help to blend the indoors and outdoors, and that's why these outdoor patios are somewhat larger and hosting activities and senior services hopefully will have also be able to have some presence here. So that's at least the hope. Every development is a bit different, and here we're hoping that with the community room with sort of common areas that can help them to sort of draw them out of their unit somewhat. And as also Curtis mentioned, because of the amenity, we treat this High Rock feel across the road, and currently many of the seniors love to sit at these sort of decrepit benches and just watch the ball games and the kids play across the street. And so there's a real sort of synergy and dynamics, and we didn't want to lose that. So part of this idea and the strategies is trying to create these opportunities for them.
Yeah, I think the back area is going to be very lovely. The my only kind of thought that came across was if there's like an event happening, and if someone was kind of like walking through that, you're gonna have to cross through that patio space.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, like if there's a way to kind of like create that opportunity for a continuous trail without having to kind of go through like an event that might happen. Although in this weather, it's only like maybe 2 or 3 months in a year. But just like maybe thinking about that circulation flow a little bit more might be useful.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Susan, do you have some questions, comments? You're still muted, Susan. Susan?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. I do have some questions. Many of them were answered. One of them you guys touched on, and that is the proximity of this place to the school across the street. And I guess you answered it, the thinking of trying to, I don't know, you have parents waiting for their kids on that street, and I'm guessing a lot of kids walking to school and parents walking to pick up their kids. Are there enough opportunities to try and intermingle those two communities that are more than passive, I guess? It sounds like you guys thought about it, but it feels a little institutional and not enough sort of small, intimate spaces, but maybe it's just, we're looking at a very conceptual design drawing.
Actually, it's interesting. It's sort of a love and hate relationship that on the High Rock Middle School, because there's 2 sort of traffic hours that the cars back up on Linden Street. And this is one of the when we talk to the abutters at those pickup and drop off times, there's this long line of traffic that sort of backs all the way down Linden Street. And we actually, as part of our site plan review, will have a traffic study that documented and also recorded sort of that level of traffic area. But in terms of the interaction with the kids across the street, we know that a lot of the seniors that currently in the Linden project, because these are single-story buildings, and then there's some of these benches, they just love to sit out there and watch the kids play. And so we, as our goal, at least through landscape planning and circulation, was trying to maybe increase that and take advantage of that opportunity. So you see some of the seating areas here along here. I think there's also some seating areas that are a bit more inside. There's some discussions about the public, or rather the neighborhood, floating through this project, but obviously there's security concerns and as such, but we do want to emphasize this sidewalk, which we will be repaving as part of this project, to sort of create some of that opportunity along here.
I see. Well, that's great. I was, I live close to this neighborhood and my son went to school there for a while. So I'm wondering, is there a plan, to bury, I don't see them in a lot of the photos that you're showing, but there's a lot of telephone poles in that area along that sidewalk. Are they going to remain or are they going to be buried?
As
One that crosses the street, but I think there's more that run along.
yeah, they are. As far as we know right now, they are remaining. I believe they are both electric and the cable system. As part of our project, we are bringing in a new transformer on site to service both buildings. And we should touch on that actually, if you don't mind me jumping around a little bit. I apologize. Going back to our site plan, you'll see that the new transformer is being brought in this location. New electric line is all the main utilities, sewer, electric, water are all coming off Linden Street. That's a new transformer for electric, and then that serves the electric room in this building in phase 1A. So, but as far as I know, those poles are staying currently.
Okay. So that brings me to the trees along that road there. Two comments about them. One is we don't really have a planting plans, but you showed a red maple there. And are you planning on having just red maples along the road there? Or a mix of trees?
I'll let Curtis take that one.
Sure.
Yeah, it's still early days on sort of individual tree selections. Again, we do have a palette that we're working with. I'm just furiously pulling it up here. So right now we're looking at red maples, tulip trees, black gum, and honey locust.
Okay.
Again, we haven't cited individual trees, but we wouldn't just plant one species along there. We would mix it up.
Okay, so that answers one question. And the second one is, just because of all the telephone poles and sort of the ugliness of the trees getting chopped up as they sort of migrate into the wiring system, that you choose a more columnar version of these trees so that they don't run into the wires.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We are set back from those wires about 15 feet. The wires are just off of the curb line, and we're sort of in board of the back of sidewalk. So we're not right underneath them.
I think
but
currently there are a bunch of trees that are already sort of pruned. I don't know where you're planting in relation to the trees that are already there, but the trees that are already there are somewhat deformed due to this practice of cutting the trees out of the wires.
Yeah.
And there are fastigiate versions of all the trees that you've got in your plan, so
Okay.
I would just suggest using more of those. And the other comment in your planting palette, it just mentioned that also having a gardening business myself, one of the huge problems that is coming up and really only getting worse are rabbits. So I would try and some rabbit resistant plants because they eat everything, and roses are a big love of rabbits, and you have a lot of roses in the plan. It's nice that there are a lot of gardeners living there, but I would try for a critter-resistant selection of plants.
Yeah. Okay. That's another.
And
good
they
one.
do love roses. They eat them all, and hostas. It sounds silly, but so many complaints about that.
Yeah. Okay.
And I did have a question about the permeable asphalt. Maybe my information is old, but isn't part of the maintenance for permeable asphalt that it needs to be regularly vacuumed for it to stay permeable?
That's correct.
Is
That's-
that sort of part of the town maintenance or the building maintenance?
It will be
or-
part of the building maintenance as part of the future development, our development partner process. So we are aware of the regular maintenance that needs to maintain the impervious or the pervious asphalt.
Those were all of my comments.
Steve?
Glad I went last because a lot of my questions were asked and they were asked a lot better than I could have asked them. Because I was concerned about the fire lane because they need to be able to turn around the space there, but I'm sure that will get approved because it looked like a dead end, and there's supposed to be a certain distance for them to make a turnaround to get out. But I guess that will be addressed to be approved. I had a lot of questions about the landscaping, but it's really early, other than my request as much as native plantings as possible. And since you really don't know yet, and you have a palette, but you don't really know the trees yet, so I had questions about that, but it's kind of early. So really, my questions have all been addressed in one way or another. So thank you.
Okay, well, I would just generally say I think the level of amenities is very high for a project like this, at least the current projects in Needham. So I think it's really wonderful what you've had going here. I have reviewed quite a few projects over the years, and the fire department is always a force that needs to be dealt with. And you need to figure out how they can get what they most essentially need without, like you say, putting a road across the back through the wetlands so that they can drive all the way around. So it can be a challenge. I think as far as the surfaces go, I think one of the few times there was some success with mitigating the width was by using a stamped concrete at the time. So they had sort of a road that the edge of it had an impression built into it that was a walking path generally. But again, the 20 feet is a big distance to deal with. And as Steve pointed out, the turnaround issues that they are looking for, it can be a real challenge to design. So I think you guys done a nice job on working that out. I would echo Millie's comment that maybe to the degree that you can continue the path towards the garden area on the south and then into the new development, whether it goes through the edge of that drive or you just make some sort of surface change or impression or paint or something, that might be a nice little feature. But I do think that the amount of amenities, the trellis, the outdoor seating, I hadn't really thought about outdoor smoking areas, but I guess you absolutely have to have those now. So I think that's good. And the patio and community room will be a real asset, I think. I think one thing that, and Reg can confirm this for me, it's currently mostly senior housing, but once there are more units, there will be a bigger mix of age groups in the facility, if I recall correct.
Actually, no, it's going to continue as senior housing, only more of it.
Okay.
And also with a smattering of 2-bedroom units, because we have certain seniors that are in a situation where they can need a second bedroom either for health reasons or they have a partner. And then when I say seniors, it's also for disabled individuals. So they are not necessarily seniors. In fact, usually are not. But they are serviced by, and on both the federal and the state side, from a subsidy point of view, they generally buildings address the needs of both those populations in the same facility.
Well, so then the community room and common spaces are really part of that community and unlikely to be sort of outside groups using the space and things. So that's
No, quite unlike, we wouldn't be against it, but they're pretty heavily used because we have a bunch of social services programs that come in every week for various events or health checks, or wellness checks, and so forth and so on. And the whole idea is to get the seniors out of their apartments and doing stuff and mingling with each other and so forth, as well as making sure that they get the kind of services they need rather than having to go off-site.
okay. That's great. So could we move on? Just look at the building elevations and
Yes.
material, talk a little bit. I will note that the package we have was the elevations were a little plainer. So that trim package that you saw, that you show on the lighter clapboard siding or shiplap siding sections is not in the information that we saw until now. So that was actually one of my first comments. It's like, can we break up the massing of some of these a little bit? But I would go back to the board and get questions and comments on the sort of elevations. Millie, do you want to go start again?
Yeah, I would say in the front, I really appreciate what you're doing with playing with the angles and, with the different materiality. It really breaks up that, linearity. At the back, again, the mirroring of the front entry with what's happening in the community room side, right? That block, that's really helpful. But the main larger wings, I felt like, similar to the front, if there's something you could do to break that up a bit, because compared to what's there right now, this is like the scale is huge, right? And I appreciate you all showed some kind of views from around the neighborhood. And while most of the buildings there are 2.5, like this is still a massive footprint. So if there's anything you could think of to kind of like help kind of break down the back a little bit more, that might be that might look good.
Yeah, I really appreciate that comment because that's one of our sort of Achilles heel at the moment is that backside, and we're whether using colors, and as you can see, we're trying to cut the roof through on the backside, or actually this is the Maple Street side, trying to break that scale down, but we're also struggling with the head height. The building is not generous in terms of the floor to floor, because we wanted to not be as high, particularly with we're trying to also increase, or rather have that proportion of creating these pitches that's not just 3 and 12s versus at a very minimum 6 and 12, not 9 and 12. So they really get a much more sort of cleaner, or rather more high, these proportionally pleasing. But at the same time, then we're challenged in terms of how we sort of maintaining these ceiling heights. So you're correct, that backside running 160, 170 feet with this material, we still have a work to do. Excuse me, on that backside facing Maple Street.
Okay.
Sorry, let me go back to the overall elevation here.
Okay, Susan, do you have any thoughts starting off?
Well, I guess I would just repeat what Millie said. It's a really large footprint compared to what's there. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a huge improvement. It's hard to get used to the scale of it compared to what's there. So I think you've done a good job. I know you're trying to increase the units and everything, so I really don't have anything else to add. I wonder if more trees, if you could bring them into the landscape, they would help layer it down and break it up more visually from the street. I don't know if you can fit more trees in, but sometimes that might help. But I like the materials, and I don't have any other comments really.
Steve?
Kind of go along with what's been said. First of all, it's great. It's wonderful you're doing this. I don't know if anything, just throwing out, anything can be done on the Maple Street side with just more contrast of materials to break it up. It's very flat on each side, the colors across in large areas that maybe you could alternate somehow, or that's your area. But other than that, it's going to be a wonderful improvement for the town of Needham. So I'm all set.
Okay, yeah, I think I would echo the same thing. And that's the first thing when I looked at the documents we received earlier, they were a little bit less developed than this, is that some more variation in the material, the large fields of material. And even on the Linden side where you have the facing gables, I mean, that's just a big gable wall with some punched openings, and to the degree that a header or a sill or something is to animate that a little bit more, I think that would be good. I think what doesn't show up in the long elevations, which I think is very helpful for you, is the way you use the knuckles, as you call them, to turn sections of the building. So when you look at those elevations, neither of those sections are one long piece. They break up and they twist. And that can be a significant help in a project, in a long wall like that, because you get a different shadow line on them, and that really starts to show up and really helps, again, start to animate the materials a little bit differently so that there is a little more variety. I'm assuming that there are going to be budget issues with a project like this that you've got to be careful about. So, adding all sorts of layers of trim and patterns and other things is going to be difficult. But to the degree that some of the larger areas of material can be just change the texture with the same material by changing the spacing and things like that.
Right.
Which I assume you just haven't gotten to yet. So, but I think those will really help finish the final look of the building. And as Millie said, it is a big change. So, but I think it's a necessary one at this point, and it's a place. And Maple Street is, if you haven't been on Maple Street, they have very large 2 families, some even with more than 2 families on them. So it's an active multifamily area. This is just a lot bigger, but these are, I mean, you look at the lower left Maple Street project, that's actually 3.5-story facade.
Right.
So
That's correct.
for a portion of, for many of the projects on Maple, you're not significantly larger in height, but you are in sort of a contiguous 100-foot facade versus a 40-foot facade. So that's kind of the difference. But I think there's a nice buffer there. That brook and wetland has always been sort of heavily grown, and the fact that you're adding additional planting, I think, will be useful. So I think you've done a nice job to this point, and a little more development, I think, will help you finish off and have a nice have a pleasing project. I think you've a long way there already. So we thank you for your time with us today.
No, thank you to the board members. I appreciate your comments. We are noting them, and so we'll incorporate them into the project. One thing I will say about the massing in the building, we recognize the height and the massing, and thus the way it's pulled back from Linden Street around 80 feet at the moment, which we're trying to pushing the Linden, trying to increase that setback, but then also mindful of the Maple Street neighbors. So it's sort of a push and pull. The Maple Street neighbor wants us to push this towards Linden. Linden wants us to push towards Maple. So
Well, when I studied community and regional planning way back when, that was always the question, is like, is the zoning change line on the center line of the street so that one side of the street is one thing and the other side of the street is that, or is it in the backyard property line so that the streetscape is the same and you feel like your front door has some consistency with your neighbors? And then in your backyard, which is more private, that's where you sort of face the change. And I always fell down on the side of doing it in the backyard because the impact was less consistent and sort of all the time. Every time you come in and out of your house, you're facing a 4-story building. Now it's more like, well, when we use the yard, which we do April to October, it's a bigger impact, but it's not really in your face every day all the time. So that's sort of my personal position, but I think you've done a nice, it's a tough thing to balance, but I think you've done a nice job, and you've had to deal with the wetlands as well.
Mark, if I may, yeah, I think I really appreciate the consideration, the questions that and suggestions we got here. And this is actually a board we haven't visited. We've done 50 or 60 other community engagement meetings, but this is our first with you, and this is really helpful because the other bodies look at different things, but they do look at the building mass. And we have been trying, Dan's had and his team a nearly impossible situation of trying to get the kind of density that we need to make the economics work, from the funding point of view, but not have it be, a large, Queen Mary structure that is on Linden Street. So things like the gable roof, we could have value engineered it into being a flat roof on the Linden Street side and save some bucks, but it just wouldn't fit into the neighborhood.
Well, yeah, I would compare it to the buildings we see on Washington Street in Newton nowadays, in the Newton corner, Newtonville. That was certainly an aesthetic approach that I wouldn't have been surprised to see. But you've taken the residential geometries and materials, and you've had to use them at a larger scale. But I think it's working well so far, and that with a little, as you get a little more time with it, I think you should be able to have a nice project. So what we do, Reg, is we will write a memo to the planning board before your hearing with them, so they'll have comments from us.
Great.
We'll sort of cover what we talked about. Sometimes it's just that we discussed the lighting and there weren't really any concerns. We thought you had it covered. And other times we'll say we advocate for the native plantings as much as possible. Animal resistance is going to be an important thing on your maintenance long term and things like that. So
we're in favor of that. Our gardeners have a very bad feeling about rabbits, so they will not object to anything on that scale.
Right.
Here.
So we will get that to them before the hearing, and I don't know whether they send you a copy. I expect they do, but at least I'm not sure what the timing and process is for that. But
they do.
Certainly will. Okay. Well, thank you for coming in, and I appreciate you for the signage for us.
Thank you, and have a nice evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
So the next item on the agenda is the minutes of minutes of July 29th. If there are any questions or changes, I have one changed on line 24. It said here it is, tabled. So the board tabled discussion of this item to later in the meeting. I want to change the word tabled to postponed. Tabling is a more significant, my understanding of meeting etiquette is that's a pretty significant thing to do. So are there any other comments or questions on the minutes from those who were there? Okay, so I would take a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I move the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, and we come to the vote. Steve,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
I approve. And Millie was not there, so she will abstain. All right, and I would take a motion to adjourn.
I move the motion.
I'll second the motion.
And we come to the vote. Steve,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Millie,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. So that was good. So Millie, thank you. Great job.